Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. We have a special guest with us here today. This is Cory Wong. Great to see you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. You're playing down the road at the Tui's Winery today.
That's right.
So what's going on there?
They are having some sort of summer festival thing, and we are playing a set of music, and it is going to be fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you performing The Optimist in its entirety?
Not necessarily in its entirety. There's a couple tunes that are very horn heavy, and I don't have my horn section with me on this gig. So we're going to do a lot of tunes off that record. We're going to do some tunes off of my last record,
right.
And even some other new things because I'm kind of a constant writer, constant creator. So I have some new ideas that I'm kind of messing with and putting in line. Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Fun.
Awesome. So I understand that you actually, you're from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And you actually started on bass, is that right?
I did.
Yeah. What did you take away from starting on bass?
So my favorite bands when I was a kid were Red Hot Chili Peppers and Primus. So I'm just right in the demographic to be bass guy.
Right.
So I wanted to play bass. I dreamed of playing bass. I love the bass. I learned a lot about just like foundational playing, but then also like with a band like Primus or Red Hot Chili Peppers, a lot of how to make something very rhythmic and very tight kind of stick out. And basically, I wanted to start a band. I was set. I had to start a band with my friends. I had these two friends that wanted to start a band. One of them said, I'll learn how to play drums, but my mom doesn't want to pay for drum lessons. So I figured, all right, screw it. I'm going to learn how to play a little bit on the drums and just teach my friend to get him going.
Right.
So I would like go to school early, like an hour before school started, and go in the band room, and the band director would let me hang out and like mess around on the drums. And then eventually when I could kind of play a couple beats, I would teach my friend. He started to get the ball rolling there. He was off and running. Then my other friend said, well, I want to be in the band. My stepdad has a bass in the attic. Like, I'll play, but I got to be the bass player.
Right.
Because, you know, my parents are going to buy me a guitar. So I was thinking, we can't have a band with two basses. Screw it. I'm going to play guitar. And I saved up all my shoveling money because that's what you do when you live in Minnesota in the winter. You shovel driveways for your neighbors and save up your money.
Right.
And I bought a Fender Stratocaster, and I was so stoked. And now I'm just stuck playing the guitar ever since then.
Wow.
Yeah.
You also played in drumline, though.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a drumline kid in high school, and that was fun because that was a totally different type of awareness to time and awareness of the grid and like how to lock. Because if you have 6 snare drum players playing the exact same thing, you have to all be feeling time the same way. And there's a lot of adjusting to the center snare, and then eventually being the center snare, having everybody adjust their time to me, and me having to stay laser focused to keep the time there. Drumline is an excellent way to get that sort of thing happening.
I would imagine so. With both that and the idea of different accents and different parts of the
totally.
beat, that all kind of ties together.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So you kind of have incorporated all of that into your approach to guitar?
Yes, totally. I mean, that's just been part of the journey, and now myself as like a rhythm guitar guy and just guitar guy in general. I play very percussively, and I think a lot of that comes from that kind of background that I have, and also just the kind of music that I really like right now.
Right.
So,
yeah, sure. Now you also went through a jazz phase.
I did.
And we're a big Pat Metheny fan, right?
I did. I was such a Pat Metheny head. I loved Pat Metheny, Schofield. When I was also doing a lot of classical stuff, I was a big Ralph Towner fan. Ralph Towner's ECM guitar player, played a lot of classical and jazz, kind of fused. For a long time, I just kind of wanted to be Pat Metheny. And then I had a teacher say, like, look, Pat Metheny is way better at being Pat Metheny than you're ever going to be Pat Metheny.
Right.
So why don't you just try to figure out how to be yourself and find your own voice?
Right.
And that was awesome. It was the best advice I had ever heard, and it kind of set me on this path to find my own voice in my music, to find my own thing, like my own artistic vision of what I want to say on the instrument and what I want to say as a person. So it's been fun to be on that journey, and now finally, like the last couple years, really feeling like I've honed in what that is and how to present it and incorporate it in what I do.
Right.
Yeah, it's
right,
fun.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you also went to McNally Smith
Yep.
College of Music. What did you take away from that experience? Because I know you ended up getting more into production at the end of that, right?
Yes. So I started at the University of Minnesota. I was a science major, a biology kid. And when I was done there, I went to McNally Smith, guitar performance. And the first year was a lot of just kicking my butt in getting to know the fretboard much better, just getting the mechanics of the instrument. And then also just like really, it was the first time that I really spent the focused time on my the craft of it, which a lot of people get. I feel like I saw a lot of my friends at school get trapped in that, like the technique part of it, that they would lose the artistry and focus on the technique and craft of that. I guess the terminology can get mixed up in there, but that was kind of the first part of school, and the second part was my teacher telling me, look, quit just trying to be other people, find out who you are. And that was a really great thing to be able to take from there, was that I was able to learn, experience things, build a network of friends and people, play with a bunch of different people, and then yes, start to hone some of my production chops. And at the time, I was cutting my teeth by working on records with local bands and also producing records for, like at the time, Borders bookstores were doing like end cap music.
Sure.
For like holidays or for just classical guitar music. And I would do records like that, not under my name or anything, just like some generic relaxing classical guitar record or something, which was awesome. It was fun because I could really do that and not necessarily make myself as vulnerable as an artist to be like, this is who I am. It was more like I got the opportunity to practice that without the weight of having to have it fail with my name on the front of it.
Right. Yeah, that's certain
Which,
freedom there.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, for better or worse.
Right.
So yeah, it was great. And then from there, I started playing a lot, sessions, touring, and now just touring and doing my own music and with Wolfpack and Fearless Flyers and that sort of thing. So it's fun. It's great.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
You spent some time in a house band playing R&B too, right?
I did. Yes. So in Minneapolis, there's this kind of legendary house gig on Sundays and Mondays at a club called Bunkers. The group is called Dr. Mambo's Combo. They've been doing it for like 30 years or something. And when I was in college, would go see this band all the time. Eventually became friends with a lot of the guys, and like Prince would hang out there, have his own table in the back. A lot of guys coming through town, playing big gigs would come and sit in and hang out because it's just kind of known as a music hang. Like John Mayer would come sit in, Jimmy Vaughn, Doyle Bramall, all these people have come and sat in and hung out, which is insane.
Right.
But the guitar player, who was one of the founding members, had shoulder surgery from like a bowling incident or something. I don't know.
Careful with that bowling ball, man.
I don't know what it was, but he had something where he had shoulder surgery and was out for like a year, and I was the guitar player to cover it. I was friends with a lot of those guys, playing a lot of other gigs with those guys. So started doing that gig a lot, and basically the prerequisite was like learn every Prince song, learn every Earth, Wind & Fire song, learn every Ohio Players song, every Shaka Khan song, and this is the 60 songs we do all the time. Just make sure you know all those obscure ones, just in case we want to pull it out at any moment.
Right.
And sure enough, they did. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just like you got to have that right away. And it was a fun mental exercise, learning how to play mental offense rather than mental defense, and that was just a matter of preparation.
Right.
Because it's very easy in those settings to play mental defense on like what's going to be called and what's going to happen, because it's all very much in the moment and kind of like cutthroat.
Right.
Got to hang, and it was fun. It was great. Yeah.
I bet.
Good
Yeah.
learning
I
experience.
was going to say, what a great experience.
Yes, of
to
course.
take away from that.
Yeah. It's not the type of learning experience for everybody, but it was really good for me. It's the sort of thing that gave me the drive to get better, to be a better player, and it really pushed me to the limits at my time, which was awesome.
Yeah, and just to have the experience of learning that whole lexicon of songs and
course.
all of the parts and
Yeah.
absorb that groove and
Yes.
that rhythm is really.
And not to mention the drummer, Michael Bland, has perfect time and perfect pitch. He hears everything. And he'll, at the end of a tune or like the end of a set, he'd say, hey man, on that Earth, Wind, and Fire tune, second chord of the chorus, don't play so many notes in your voicing because Bill's got this thing happening on the organ and this thing happening on the whirly. Just lay off your A string on that and this and that. It's like, how are you hearing all that while you're playing the drums?
Right.
It's just like he hears everything. So rather than it feeling like he's picking on me, the only reason he was doing it is because he wanted me to be a better player. And he wants the thing to be better. And he wants us all to keep a high regard to the gig and a certain level of respect for the songs in general. So that was another lesson in itself. You know?
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. You mentioned during your college years the technique thing, and you've said in the past that there's a place for practicing just pure technique, but your approach now is much more to practice the musical side of things and incorporating the techniques as you need them for playing music.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's obviously a base level of technique that I think you should have in what you're playing. Like, there's certain players in bands that don't need to shred, but it wouldn't hurt if they could.
Right.
They don't need to. Whatever, that's fine. I think for what I do, my philosophy is that if you're hearing something a certain way, you should be able to pull it off. If you just never hear it that way, that's fine. You don't. I mean, not everybody hears music the same way. Not everybody hears the same type of subdivision, and that's totally cool. But if you're hearing that in what you want to play, you should just be able to do it. And a lot of it, and that being said, that caveat is the thing of like, if I feel like this is the musical decision to make in this moment, I want to be able to have the technical facility to pull it off.
Right.
If I just want to, rather than the opposite, where some people it's like, I have all this technical facility, I want to pull it off. And they'll sometimes just force it in a moment or in a song or something, which we've all been guilty of, especially as guitar players. We've had those moments where it's just like, guys, I've been working on this lick really fast. Just let me get it out. And then it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't the most musical decision.
Right.
And whatever. So talking about the technique thing is sometimes kind of a touchy subject for different people. But yes, I think there's certain things that you should work on in technique, that I should work on in technique. Sorry, I'm projecting. Things that I should work on with my technique, but only because I feel like it would help make the musical expression of what I want to play happen.
Right.
In the way that I want to execute it.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Since we're talking about it,
Yeah.
it's interesting watching you play. You've talked a lot about your right hand and how loose it is.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me in the style of music you're playing is I think what really defines it is muting the stuff that you don't want
Yes.
to ring.
Yes.
In your case, is that a function of your right hand or is that your left hand that's doing that muting?
So what's interesting about that, a lot of people talk about my right hand technique, ask about my right hand technique, which is fine. Really the main thing I think about with my right hand technique is just the constant 16th note thing. Just not a ton of accents. I let all the nuance and accents normally come out here in the left hand. So if I do that exact same thing, go it's really not much different with my right hand than going. Sorry for my tuning, but my right hand is really just kind of doing the same thing. My left hand has so much, to me, more to do with it, other than the fact that most people don't have as steady of a right hand. And what I hear a lot of people do is trying to, like, forcing accents and not focusing as much on just the precision of time, which is where the drumline thing came in handy, where it's like, hearing the grid that way, and not always, and being able to adjust. Like, I think playing to a grid is great. I think metronomes are cool, but I think it's also okay to learn how to weave in front of the metronome if you want it to feel that angst, or relax on that side of the metronome if you want it to feel more laid back, or just right on the money.
Right.
That's fine. I think there's respect in all of that. I respect all sides of the grid,
Right.
forward and back. But there's a lot of nuance that happens in the left hand that I think gets overlooked.
Yes.
And like you're saying, the muting. So like if I'm just going, that doesn't really groove. But if I go, that's a little more muting. Now if I take it to the next level and kind of go, just when I hit on those strings, it kind of does the accents for me, so I don't have to do it with my hands. So it's. So my right hand's just doing this. But it's the same as. Sorry, I'm out of tune. So really, I'm kind of thinking the same thing, right hand-wise, as I am when I'm playing acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I play a little more in tune. That's okay. I'm making myself vulnerable here.
Of course. So the interesting thing there, though, is when you went up the neck and you were playing little figures.
Yeah.
Then is your right hand still hitting all 6 strings, and you're muting the rest of the strings with your left hand, or are you focusing in then more on the individual?
That's a great question. The big thing I'm thinking about is the big difference is just the size of the sweep. So when I go in a little more accurate, if I were to keep the same sweep the whole time, it would sound like this. Like when I get low, then I kind of have to go a little more accurate and make my sweep that big. When normally I'm like here to here.
Mm-hmm.
So when I get in and play a little more of the figures, I kind of just focus it a little more and think of it that way, as far as like where the center of the thing is.
Right.
Which, yeah, I mean, like a lot of the Nile Rodgers thing, he holds, and a lot of people compare my playing to his because maybe we're like really percussive rhythm players. I think Nile's amazing. He's not my biggest influence. Prince and like Al McKay are more of an influence, but I totally see the lineage of why people see that. Anyways,
Sure.
I'm referencing Nile Rodgers now.
Right.
What I hear his stuff is a lot like he'll hold those chords and he'll hold the full chord or something, but he'll just hit the 3 strings and sometimes a little bit extra just to have that extra sound. Like if it's just these 3 strings, it's there's a little more.
A little bit more ring and beef there, isn't there?
Yeah, so if I went just, or if I'm going full chunk the whole time, it maybe gets to be a little overwhelming, and especially if I'm not playing right in sync with the drummer, it's going to sound like a mess. So I think of myself as a comping part, but also like I have to be shaker guy. Because underneath that sound, a lot of guitar players don't realize this, that's happening. Like
Right.
that is very audible when you listen back. Like if you listen for that, you'll hear that and you'll hear the chord.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so there's a lot of that sound in there. Because of that, I try not to let those mutes be all 6. I try to focus it a little bit. And normally it's like top 4 strings or bottom 4. And when I say top and bottom, I mean by note, not by physical orientation.
Right. So the low strings and
Yeah. Low, high.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Interesting also watching, you appear to have a pretty actually light pick attack.
Yes.
But you also get a real snap, especially on your upstrokes.
Okay, yeah.
Is that something you purposely dig in with those a little bit more?
I feel like I have a light attack. I don't necessarily purposefully dig in harder on the upstrokes.
I don't know
But
if you're digging harder,
now
but
that
you-
I'm thinking about it, yes, it maybe does snap a little more,
a little more of a snap, yeah.
but it's just it's how I hear it. You
Sure.
know, like if I'm a yeah, I guess
You kind of pop out, don't you?
I
a little
pop
bit?
up a little bit more, and part of that is like my right hand technique sucks. You know, by like technical standards, like I don't hold my pick the proper way, which some of my teachers at school just tried to get me to practice for hours, and I did. I can't tell you how many hours I sat in practice rooms with, like trying to get perfect technique.
Right.
But whenever I listened back to recordings, I'd be like, it doesn't sound like me. It doesn't feel like me. So finally, I just said screw it and started playing like this. And yes, so when I pick up, because I hold my pick like this, and just let these fingers do whatever they do, I think just because of my pick angle,
Snaps out a little bit.
my upstroke is a little more of a like. It is a little more of a pop up. So, but that I guess does contribute it.
Right.
Wow, I've never thought about that. Thank you, Mitch.
There we go. You're welcome.
Wow, what a good therapy section. What a good therapy session.
That's what I'm here for. No couch, but so another aspect of that is watching you play. A lot of times when you're doing a run, particularly when you're doing double stops or thirds,
Yep.
it's all downstrokes.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll do that. And I think that just has to do with the way that I like the sound, the way that I hear that sound. I hear it muted much more than. That's fine. But what really gets me going is when it's muted. Yeah. And also, I think it has to do with like, I don't know. I had that sound in my head. That sound, a lot of people like want me to, when they say, oh, do your thing, they mean for me to do that, because that's how a lot of people recognize my sound and that sort of thing, whatever. But I've had that sound in my head since I was a kid, listening to, like, my dad is Chinese, he's born in America, but my grandparents are from China, and I remember hearing that kind of music, like where there would be, maybe it's the pipa or something, where there would be much more, almost more marimba, but plucky, tighter plucky sounding things, which you can actually get that way, but I feel like it, I don't know.
It maintains more of the percussive acts.
Yeah, it's definitely more percussive, but it's also, yeah, I don't know, maybe it sounds more pianistic or like more like a marimba or a pipa or something. There's something about the character of it that feels more at home with me. That I don't know. It just, I hear that when I hear that sound, you know?
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Another aspect to what you do is you have the constant 16th note and kind of the shaker effect that you were talking about, but you also allow a lot of space in your playing, and you're playing a lot of times in bands where there'll be a couple of keyboard players, maybe another guitar, two drummers, sometimes bass player, horn section, you know, big bands, right? But still, overall, a minimalist approach.
Yeah.
That would be destroyed if somebody came in and played big bar chords or something.
Totally.
What I'm curious about is how you choose the voicings that you use to fit into a particular situation.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with range. I mean, that would be the number one thing. What range am I covering in relation to the range of the piano? Or, I mean, in most of my music is not necessarily piano, it's like whirly or organ.
Right.
So where is the range of what I'm playing in relation to that? Bass is obviously covering low end.
Because you rarely play a full big chord.
In a lot of cases, I do.
Just fragments of.
So if I'm going, I'm thinking that for the most part, that's just like adding a little body to one part of the phrase.
Right.
But the other thing I think beyond just like. I'll just sit and play that as a part, where a lot of times people will play that for like a bar, and then they'll change it up and do some other stuff or whatever. I think in phrases, and I try to think of, even if it's like a 32 bar thing, I will oftentimes just stick to a 2-bar pattern and do it the whole time, because there's so much other stuff happening around that gives it that extra thing.
Right.
Or like, and that's like a thing you see very common at jam sessions, where it's like nobody just wants to play the same thing over and over again. So it a lot of times just kind of sounds like a mess, which can be fine and it can be very fun. But for me to make it sound a little more focused, I'm thinking of a part in a specific range. If the keyboard player is playing here, I'm going to kind of cover this space up here.
Right.
If we're both playing in here, I'll make sure our parts, at least rhythmically, are weaving in and out of each other in a way that works.
Right.
You know, and also the higher, like kind of middle high register of the guitar fits in a lot easier and better with most other stuff. So if I'm there, there's so much room underneath for a keyboard player to fit underneath it, but then also a synth or something go. You know, it can fit up there. So kind of in the middle of the neck, there's so much space that you leave open for something underneath and something above.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of times, I don't play huge chord voicings very often, but I'll hold voicings and just pick and choose when I play the beef of them.
Sure.
I don't know.
Right, which is part of the accenting.
Yeah,
Kind
totally.
of part of the thing.
Yeah.
But it also results in, because you're defining a space and everybody else can work around you, you're more audible in most mixes.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
certainly it's a mix thing, but
Yeah.
a great mix starts with a great arrangement.
Yeah.
And that really allows you to come through and really kind of drive and serve as a foundation, even though you're not necessarily on the bottom.
Sure, of course.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's arrangement, orchestration, however you think about it. I think a lot of people, when they're producing, don't necessarily think about, they either look at the whole and then don't focus in on the individual parts, or they're so tunnel visioned on the specific parts, they don't always hear the whole.
Right.
And myself, also guilty every once in a while, that's fine. But my goal is to be cognizant of how everything is fitting rhythmically and how everything is fitting range-wise. So it's like, if I'm looking at the piano, bass is here, keyboards are here, I'm kind of in here. But if I'm rhythmically, like if they're range-wise in this area filling up a lot, and if I'm only like this much of the range, I can take up a little more space in the subdivision.
Right.
You know, so there's range, size of voicing, but there's also density of subdivision. So I think about time and production like three-dimensionally. So I only described 2 dimensions there.
There's that ineffable.
Yeah, there's the intangible. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have to ask you, I was fascinated by the mirror image dual drummer.
Yeah, the
thing.
palindrome.
Yeah,
is what we call
tell
it.
us about that.
So that was actually birthed because my last record's release party, I was doing a show at this club called Ice House in Minneapolis, which I love. It's one of my favorite clubs. It just so happens though that the stage was pretty small, and there was it was kind of an all cast record for me. A lot of my friends recorded at different times, different places, and very fun. Fun to have like a party vibe of all my friends playing. Not all my friends, but a lot of friends playing.
Yeah, sure.
And had several drummers on the record and just different characteristics of different songs. I thought it would be fun to have both of them play for my record release party. Most people would just say, okay, you set up one kit, and then they just switch off. Like one guy gets down, one guy gets up. One of my drummers is left-handed, the other one's right-handed. So it doesn't quite work to just have the guy get up and down on the same kit. And there wasn't enough room for 2 different drum sets, so we just decided to build a drum kit with 1 kick, and then snare, hat, floor tom on each side for each person.
Right.
And then it was just like, well, maybe we should have you guys both play at the same time the whole time. And now it's like one person has kick drum control and kind of leads the song, leads the charge, and the other person is aux guy and extra, like, second and third pass overdub guy.
Right.
Kind of thing, you know?
Right.
So it's fun. It adds this cool element.
Definitely.
And it's kind of funny because they look, from far away, if they're both wearing their glasses in a similar outfit, they look like twins.
Right.
Which is funny. I've had so many people at festivals come up and say, how did you find a pair of twins that play drums, and one's left-handed and one's right-handed? It's like,
right.
they're just good friends of mine. You know, like, I don't want to correct them because the story's too good.
Right,
you know?
right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So the other thing I have to ask you about is the fascination with extreme smooth jazz and the Kaz nod.
All right, I'm glad we're talking about this because this addresses why I have a mustache. I don't want this mustache, but I'm a thespian playing a part. I got a role that's happening right now on the internet. I'm a digital guy. I hide behind binary code most days of the year, and that's fine. But now that I've gone analog face-to-face with an audience and here with you, although we're going back to digital,
right.
I assume.
Yeah, I think we will.
I have to confront the fact that I have a mustache. And it's a fun little thing that I use to try to get Dave Kaz's attention. Because Dave Kaz is hilarious, and he's awesome, and he's so cool. We have become friends after this smooth jazz makeover thing and me, like, trying to get his attention on the internet.
Right.
And it's been a fun journey of, like, studying the smooth jazz scene, because it's very interesting. The thing is, like, I don't know of any other crossover, at least, like, within my circle and my friends. Like, a lot of us dig instrumental R&B music, and we all dig instrumental jazz music in different ways, but, like, you know, granted, smooth jazz as a whole in the last 10, 15 years has not been very exciting to listen to on records. And a lot of those artists would probably tell you the same thing. Seeing it live, it's a totally different thing. I don't get it. Like, playing smooth jazz live is fun. And a lot of those acts that I think their records are kind of flaccid, for lack of better terms,
right.
crush it live.
Right.
And their shows are exciting. Anyways, I think it is just a fun thing that could be a cool crossover, and Dave and I collaborating now and doing some things. Dave's an insane player.
Yes.
He's legit. And I had no idea how good he actually was until he came and met us in the studio. He's like, what's the tune? Put it in front of him. He's like, all right, cool. We did one pass. He slayed it. The second time, the second pass, I was like, oh, what would be cool is if we linked up at the end of this and did like a line, like a line like that, like the one that I was playing earlier.
Right.
And I was like, oh, you play the top line, I'll play the bottom line. Let's do this. He's like, oh, is it this? Okay, cool. Got through. He just nails an insane clinic-style solo. And then at the end of it, remembers the line. And we both, like, were so surprised that we both remembered rhythmically and harmonically where it laid.
Right.
And it was just so much fun because he's laser-focused and so much fun, and he brings so much energy that it's fun to try to, like, infiltrate a smooth jazz scene.
Oh, yeah,
I'm up for the challenge. You know, our generation needs an ambassador for smooth jazz.
There you go.
And smooth jazz needs an ambassador to the younger generation. And I'm up for the challenge of.
I think with
of
the
being that
Optimist
bridge.
Dave Kaz remix, you took the step
I think
forward.
I think we're gonna
definitely
go
want
for
to
it.
check that out, man. The video's cool. It's a
you.
lot of fun, man.
That's the tune
great.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
At the end of the video, Dave and I are so excited and high five because it's like, we got the line. Yeah, and that was literally 10 minutes after meeting.
Right.
Like, he showed up in the studio. He's like, all right. He called me before. He's like, I have an hour. I have an hour to do this. We recorded 2 songs.
Right.
And it's just like, boom. And he nailed it. Every single take was insane. I couldn't believe it. I can't say enough great things about his playing.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Man, Cory, thanks for taking time out. I know you got a show to get to tonight.
Yes.
So we want to make sure we get you there on time.
Yes.
Don't hold up the crowd. But we appreciate you sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your wisdom and your insight with us here today. It's just great to have
thanks
you
for
here.
having me, Mitch.
You bet.
Appreciate
It's
it.
a real pleasure.
All right.
And thank you for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. I'm Mitch Gallagher.